All right. I'm going to keep watching the waiting room and let people in as we go, but we are going to get started. So some ground rules first. My name is Crystal Hooper. I am NJALA's digital liaison, and I'll be your moderator today. Um, we have three panelists joining us to be our semi-experts on this topic today. Um, and there are about 17 questions that we came up with that relate to presentations and having your voice heard. So we're going to go through those first. You are welcome to put your feedback if you agree with strongly with a perspective. You can add that feedback in the chat. You can also add any questions into the chat. If the question pertains to what we're talking about in that round, then we will certainly pause and address it then. Otherwise, we'll wait until the end of the question session, and then we'll talk about anything that was added in the chat. So again, thank you for coming. Please keep your microphones on mute. I know you entered the room and you were on mute. You will have a chance to unmute and ask your questions as well. But for right now, I'm going to stop sharing the screen because I want you to see and meet who your panelists are. So first, we have Karina, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Karina Gonzalez. I'm an adult services librarian with the Piscataway Public Library, and I'll let Joanne introduce herself.
Thanks, Karina. Yes, I'm Joanne Rubkins, formerly of Library Link NJ, now semi-retired and consulting. And I'll be happy to turn it over to Sherry.
Good afternoon. My name is Sherry Talercio. I work for Ocean County Library. I'm a librarian and I also serve as the public information officer. So I oversee public relations and printing and graphics. And I'll bring it back to Crystal.
Thank you. So those are your panelists for today, Karina, Joanne, and Sherry. Again, while I get the screen share pulled back up, feel free to use the chat to introduce yourselves, to ask questions, to share your feedback while we are going through our questions, and we'll answer your questions at the end. So we're going to get started. So question one is actually for Sherry, and it is, why should I learn how to do this?
Well, being able to communicate clearly in front of an audience is essential in almost every aspect of life, from presentations to interviews to everyday interactions with fellow coworkers and patrons. An engaging conversation or speech can not only inspire and educate, it can also in many ways change the world, which is what I like to think we do as people that work at a library. In our little ways, we do change the world. I have an 18-year-old son who's very immersed in digital forms of communication, whether it be texting, using Snapchat, messaging, etc. These are basically the means by which he communicates with most of his peers. And sometimes it's a struggle for him to speak in public. He also is shy, which kind of makes it a little more difficult for him. And I've had many motivating and mentoring conversations with him to let him know that digital means of communication will only take him so far in life. Public speaking is a necessity and it's an essential skill to know. So many additional opportunities in life will come up for those who are able to effectively speak in public. Public speaking allows us to ace the interview for the job that we've always wanted. It allows us to advocate for topics and causes that we hold near and dear to our hearts. And it also allows us to be a voice for the underrepresented. I mean, I could go on and on about the benefits of public speaking. I'm a big proponent. I love public speaking, as you hopefully can tell. And it's inevitable, honestly, that at some point in our lives, we will need to present. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect. So the more you practice speaking in public, the more confident and comfortable you're going to feel. In preparation for this presentation, I started looking at a lot of TED Talks that are, some of them I listed on the presentation skills resource list. They help you out a lot with seeing somebody who's public speaking in a way that you either want to mirror, or maybe you see things that you don't want to be doing that they're doing. And having the ability to speak in public also allows you to motivate, inspire, and educate people on various subjects. It could be something as simple as quickly presenting a statement regarding your library's upcoming programs and events at the beginning of a larger event. It could also be a one-on-one interaction with a patron searching for something particular as far as resources that you can help them find. So in general, it's useful to realize that every single one of us has encountered public speaking at some point in our lives, and we're always going to. We are already essentially public speakers in our own varying degrees of comfort levels and expertise. So I hope that answered the question. If anybody else wants to chime in.
Thank you, Sherry.
Sure.
Yeah, Joanne, Karina, did you have anything to add?
I think Sherry said it perfectly.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
indeed. I think Sherry said it perfectly.
Wonderful. Right, we're going to go on to question 2, which is for Joanne. How do I even start to prepare a presentation?
Well, it seems public speaking can be really difficult for a lot of people. I'm also like Sherry, I'm really at home with it. But frankly, most people would rather be the body in the coffin than have to give the eulogy at the funeral. Standing up is just in front of a whole, it's going to be really scary. So the main thing to help you with that, and I know that Karina will talk, I think, about nerves as well, is to be totally prepared. And I think as librarians, people who work in libraries, we tend to be an organized, prepared group. Um, you're being invited to speak to a group with a purpose. So you know your purpose to begin with. And you must have enthusiasm for that purpose. If you're not enthusiastic about the topic they've asked you to come and speak to them about, then no one else will be. So that means know your material and know your audience. Ask the organizer a lot of questions. Talk with attendees, possible attendees in advance. Get there early. Introduce yourself, shake hands, and then sit. And before you even do that, you need to sit down with a pen and paper or a PowerPoint or however you want to do it and start organizing your thoughts about what you want to convey. And I recommend that you don't do more than 5 main points in a presentation and organize them in a way that makes sense for the group. Are you going to put your most important thing first, or is it going to be last? You can have some supporting materials. If you are advertising a service and you've got a brochure for it, fabulous. Or direct them to a website if you want to. Someone else will talk a little bit about handouts. You need to create an opening statement, not a joke. Never, ever tell a joke at the beginning of a presentation unless you're an expert comedian. You do not want your words going out in the cricket-filled silence of the room and you've lost the audience before you've even started, because everybody in that room is tuned in to one radio station, WIFM. What's in it for me? And you've got to answer that. Create an opener that gets their attention, structure those 5 points, do some smooth transitions from point to point, and then prepare the closing. People remember the first thing you say, and they tend to remember the last thing you say, and everything in between can be a bit of mush. So prepare the closing, give them a boffo statement at the end, give them a memorable statement. And there's lots of material about what could be an opener and how to do that. But preparation, organizing things, getting that through is the basic 5 points, opening, closing, and 5 points in between. And own your material and deliver it with enthusiasm.
Thank you, Joanne. Sherry or Karina, did you have anything you wanted to add on this question?
No, thanks.
I would just say if you're looking, because Joanne really touched upon the sort of mental preparation that you need to do. But if you're looking for physical things, I love index cards for organizing your thoughts. You can use Post-it notes. Obviously, there are digital versions of these things, and jot all your ideas down, and then you can sort of play Tetris and move things around so you have a physical representation of what your thoughts are.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. And this question is for Sherry to answer. How do I calm my nerves? Public speaking scares me.
There are so many ways that you can calm your nerves before public speaking. I think this topic is something that personally you need to realize what works for you. It could be that you prefer to do some sort of mindful meditation prior to a speech, or vocally you could prepare by having a cup of warm tea with some honey to prepare and soothe your vocal cords. Essentially, you're performing, so it's the same type of things that somebody would do that performs. It could also be that you prefer to sit instead of stand for the duration of your speech. That might make calm your nerves a bit so that you're not jumping around the stage while you're talking. Some people will also calm their nerves by inviting friends or family to attend the presentation or speech if the situation allows that. Having a friendly face in the audience is really good with helping to calm you down. And it also gives you something to focus or someone to focus on almost as an anchor throughout your presentation. So, I mean, the possibilities of calming your nerves will really be up to you. You have to tap into what makes you feel comfortable and calm in general, and somehow utilize those things to help you prepare when you are getting ready to public speak. I also highly suggest of being very mindful of your breathing before, during, and after your presentation. Breathing sounds very easy, but it actually isn't. If you really pay attention and you're conscious of it, people find that when they get nervous, they tend to breathe more rapidly. So just taking a pause, and this is what I do normally. I'll consciously take a few deep breaths right before starting to speak. So I time it. So I give myself like 2 minutes before I'm getting ready to speak. My rule of thumb is to count 5 while breathing in, hold for a second, and then 5 breathing out. And I do that 3 to 5 times to help control my breath and my nerves along with my heart rate. During a presentation, if you find that you're getting nervous, just take a moment to pause. Don't be afraid to professionally be honest with your audience. And if you hiccup or lose a spot, just say, "Oh, sorry about that. I'm a bit nervous. Let me find my spot." Or, "Thanks for being a great audience. I'm a little nervous." Most people in the audience feel the same exact way that you do. And most of the times people are going to be very empathetic to those feelings, and they'll be compassionate with how you feel of being nervous. So you might want to just say it like, "I haven't done a presentation in a while. I'm a little nervous, so bear with me if I lose my spot." Those would be my suggestions for how to calm your nerves. It's really a personal thing as to what calms you down.
Crystal, you have to unmute.
You are absolutely right. Thank you, Joanne. I was
You're
saying thank you, Sherry. And Joanne and Karina, did you have anything you wanted to add to that question?
I'd like to build on the pause. I think that's extremely important. Thank you, Sherry, for bringing that up. Build it in very deliberately throughout the presentation. Writing, and if you've got notes or an index card, write it down in big block letters. Pause. And as she said, and I can't emphasize this enough, most of those people in the audience, they want you to succeed. They don't want to be up on that stage or podium or another room and be the focus of all eyes. So they're rooting for you. Build the pause in, and that way, if you lose your way along the way, you don't even say, "Excuse me, I have to see." You just have a pause. You look at your note, you pick up the information, back out at the audience, and you continue.
Very
I, I
good.
I would just add to not be afraid of the silence. It's okay to talk slowly. It's okay to pause when you need to. You do not need to feel like every single second has to be filled with sound. It's okay to breathe.
Thank you both for adding those thoughts and opinions onto that question. And we're going to move right along um, to question number 4, which is going to be for Joanne to answer, which is, do I have to memorize my talk?
Absolutely not. I don't think memorizing is a really good idea. I mean, unless you've got an eidetic memory. I think it drives the spontaneity out. What you're saying, you should have your talking points ready. You have your notes, look at them, your index cards in a Word document. If you're doing PowerPoint, you can print out note pages. Put things in large letters, but don't stare at your notes. Don't be one of those people who just stares down at the notes and never looks up. Look down, scoop up the information you want, look back out, and speak. The only two parts of it that I would recommend that you get really clearly in your brain is your memorable opening and memorable closing statements. Have those in your head and deliver them with confidence. But I have yet to memorize anything in the 30 years I've been doing public speaking.
That is reassuring advice for me, for sure. Sherry or Karina, would you have anything you'd like to add to this question?
I'm just going to say that I agree with Joanne. Sometimes when things are memorized too, they sound like they're memorized. It's almost robotic in a sense, and you're right. You do lose that spontaneity of, an informal presentation. As long as you have like your main points covered, the rest of it will just come naturally. It can't hurt to practice, which doesn't mean memorize. It just means to feel comfortable with the material. But I agree. I don't think that I've ever memorized fully a speech. Plus, I don't think I can if I want to. So, but I think your advice is great, Joanne. Definitely.
All right, thank you. Moving on to our next question, which is for Karina to answer. What advice would you give to shy people giving a presentation?
So a lot of these points are actually going to mirror what Sherry said earlier about calming nerves. Many people think that in order to give presentations, you need to be outgoing, loud and confident and energized by all the attention. That's not true. There are many ways to present. You can be soft-spoken. Yeah, you still have to use the microphone for accessibility reasons, but you can take your time and be yourself. You can sit down. People in wheelchairs do it all the time. You can take breaks. You can be honest with the audience, like Sherry said, and tell them that you're terrified. You probably can't do that if it's a TED talk, but in most of the circles that you're going to be, going around in, they're going to be library workers. They're going to be accepting and caring people. You could also arrange the space as you see fit, which is important. If you don't feel comfortable standing in front of everybody, then turn it into a circle. There's no rules against that. If we're talking about overcoming your shyness, like Sherry said, different things work for different people. The fear usually stems from intrusive thoughts about what the audience is thinking about you. Do they think I'm terrible at this? Do I look all right? Will I say anything up here that's going to get me fired? What happens if I don't answer the question right? What if I don't know what to say? Getting over this kind of fear is very difficult. But like Sherry said, you can maybe use some meditation. Others like to play a game or do something fun to distract themselves right before they go on. Some people will use a worry stone or something else sensory to help ground them. You have to explore and find out what works for you. What works for me is I remember that people are generally concerned with themselves far more than they are concerned with you. So if I'm worried about what people are thinking of me, everybody else is probably also worried about what people are thinking of them.
Thank you, Karina. Joanne and Sherry, did either of you want to add anything to this question?
I think Karina covered it really well.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to the next question, which is for Joanne. Does the presentation environment matter?
Well, yes, indeed it does. But you may be asked to speak in all kinds of environments, indoor, outdoor, small rooms, big rooms, small groups, large groups. Those are all factors. I recommend when at all possible that you visit the venue that you'll be speaking in before you do your presentation. If you physically arrange with the organizer to go to that space and look around and then ask a whole series of questions, which I'll cover in a moment, then do it. If it's not possible, then what you need is to have a really good description from a reliable source. Your organizer should be that. You should know exactly what that venue is like, what the circumstances are, and what's available to you. So as you consider the purpose of what you're speaking, and you are getting set to deliver it, and you've got your main points and you've organized things, there are at least 3 things you need to consider about the room or the venue that you'll be speaking in. The first one is lighting. If you're using PowerPoint or Google Slides or projection of any kind, can you dim the front of the room so they can stand out? Do you have enough light to read your own notes? Can't tell you how many podiums I have used where the light fixture on the podium does not work. I am usually prepared for just about everything. I take with me a little portable book clip light so that I make sure that I have light to look at my notes. The next thing besides lighting is sound. Use a microphone. Unless you're speaking to 10 or 12 people, use the microphone and then find out what microphones are available to you. Is it a lavalier that gets clipped to a waistband? Is it going to be a handheld thing? And here I'm going to date myself. Like Phil Donahue used to run around the room and thrust microphones into people's faces. Is it stationary? Is it clipped to the podium? Is it standing to the left or the right? How does it work? And one of the reasons you get there early is not just to meet people, but to go over all these technical things. And how's the room arranged? Are they an auditorium seating? Are people sitting around luncheon tables? Have they just had their lunch? And now it's snoozy time. And we all have experienced that. And if you're using equipment, laptop, software, a projector, you'll need electric cords or board. If you're just using flip charts and whatever, master the equipment. Ask what if you're using their equipment. Or I recommend if you do a lot of speaking that you have a remote mouse so you can go around the room and click a slide from 20 feet away if you need to. Master the equipment. If you can't master the equipment, then don't use it. You are your best visual aid. So yes, that environment makes a lot of difference to how you deliver and how they receive. And you are looking to persuade them to something. Persuade them the value of the library, to part with money for a program. And you are there to stand and deliver and persuade and get them to some kind of action. And the environment makes a big difference.
Thank you, Joanne. Karina or Sherry, would you like to add anything? No? All right. Let's move on to our next question, which is going to also be for Joanne. Do I need to prepare an icebreaker?
When my colleagues and I were discussing this, we had very strong feelings here. And so they might just chime in at the end of my response. And no, it's absolutely not necessary to create an icebreaker. I only see the need for an icebreaker is if you're going to be with the same group of people over the next day, 2 days, 3 days, and nobody knows each other. And now it's your time to get to know each other a little bit before the day proceeds. But if you're coming in, and I'll use the after luncheon, presentation as an example. You're not wasting time with icebreakers. And frankly, most of them are really dopey. I mean, it doesn't lend much. Believe me, I have used them and used them well in particular circumstances. But just to create an icebreaker for the occasion of having an icebreaker, I think is just nonsense. And as I was sharing last week with my colleagues here, I actually used one a couple of weeks ago at a workshop that I did, but it was a very small group and it was extremely effective. And the big thing with that icebreaker is I tied it into the purpose of the workshop. There was a purpose and a reason for the icebreaker. It just wasn't there for the sake of being there. Frankly, you just don't have the time. They're going to give you maybe 30 minutes to speak at the most, or even if you're speaking for an hour and a half to 3 hours, how can you do an icebreaker with 50 people that might be in the room? It doesn't make any sense at all. Karina, Sherry, what do you think?
I agree. And I have to be honest, when I prepare a presentation, icebreaker doesn't even cross my mind. Like, it's not one of my rule of thumb must have things. I think, like you said, dependent on the situation, if it's a small group of people that maybe have never met, but if you're presenting in front of coworkers, they all kind of know each other. So it would it wouldn't really serve much of a purpose. And I think, like you said, Joanne, it would take away from your time that you have to present about whatever subject it is that you're trying to present about. So I'm in agreement with that.
The only time I've successfully used an icebreaker is when I needed to vamp, I needed to stall because there was another speaker who's supposed to come and they're not here yet, or something like that. And then I'll be like, hey, let's all go around the room and introduce ourselves because I need to kill time. That's about it.
I agree with the time killer aspect. And I just wanted to share, I have used them before in a team environment where people were not getting along as a team. And so it could be like a nice bonding or just reminding people to have a bit more compassion and that, all opinions matter. But yeah, tread lightly, like, because I will echo what Joanne was saying at the beginning when she answered. Sometimes that eye roll can be very effective across the room. So you don't want to start out your presentation with that. But my 2 cents, and thank you all for contributing to that question. We're going to move on to the next one, which is for Karina to answer. How do you make your presentation look good?
So to answer this question varies on whether or not you are using tools like a slideshow to accompany your presentation. So I'm going to answer this quickly in 2 parts because answering this question could be a presentation in and of itself, which I have given before. So if we're talking slides, keep in mind that they are there to accessorize you. How did Joanne put it, that you are your best visual aid? You're the main attraction. So the slides should help get across whatever information you are trying to impart and should mostly be visual. If your slide is full of words, the audience will be spending their time reading rather than listening to you. By all means, make your slides available for people to peruse later. You can put extensive text notes accompanying your slides and attached to the slide, but the slide itself should mostly be visual. I don't have the time here to go into detail about typography, which is the kinds of fonts you should use and how you should pair them, or image selection, but I'll leave you with this when it comes to design. Generally shoot for light backgrounds and dark fonts with high contrast. At the very least, this will ensure that the folks with color blindness will be able to access the content. I love talking about design, so if you'd like to know more, feel free to contact me. I can talk about this topic all day. But remember, they're here to see you, not necessarily your slides. So how you present yourself matters as well. I'm not saying you have to wear a suit, and we'll talk about that in more detail later, but you should wear something that makes you feel good about yourself and doesn't distract from your presentation. Probably shouldn't come in a clown suit. But if 3-piece suit is what you need, then great. But maybe it's a favorite piece of jewelry, some lucky orthopedic shoes. I knew someone who loved a feather boa. But if you can't relax, you can't present. So make sure that you factor yourself when it comes to making your presentation look good.
If you're going to do PowerPoint slides or Google Slides, a quick rule of thumb, if you're putting words on it, is no more than 6 words per line and no more than 6 lines. But I think going more visual is really important. And to build on what I said earlier, that you acknowledged, Karina, about you being your own best, visual. When at all possible, stand to the left of your presentation. And what I mean is when the audience is looking at the screen, at the slides, that you are standing on the left to it. And the reason is that people read from left to right. So they look at you, they may read or look at the slide, and then their eyes will naturally come back to you and look at the slide. And I can tell you, you can arrange this ahead of time to a certain extent. But I have walked into a room where I was going to present and the podium was bolted to the floor off to the side on the right. There was nothing I can do. You just live with it. But yeah, that's my thought. Sherry?
No, I agree. I agree with what both of you said. And, you know, Karina, I could go on and on about this too, because I, I deal with our printing and graphics department and they specialize in this. And you designed wonderful slides for today. They're clear, they're concise, they're, you know, they're not, like you said, it should just have like a quick statement and a visual aid, and then really you should be doing the talking. Somebody shouldn't have to sit and read a slide to know what's going on, nor do you want them paying attention to that when they should be paying attention to you. So I agree with both of my colleagues.
Thank you all. And we did have a cool comment in the chat. Jenna shared, she knows a librarian who always has her Nancy Pearl action figure facing her when she gives presentations. So how cool is that? And probably also is a de-stressing tool as well. So thank you for sharing that, Jenna. And we are going to move to our next question, which is for Sherry to answer. And it's about dress attire. Do you have to wear a suit?
No, not necessarily. In my opinion, it kind of depends on what type of presentation you're doing to determine how you should dress for the presentation. This is also somewhat of a personal choice, so many people would answer this quite differently, depending on who you ask. If you are presenting to a few coworkers during like a staff development day or a staff event, you can probably dress more casual depending on what the dress code is in your workplace. If you are presenting to like board of trustees or commissioners, in my opinion, these are all my opinions, by the way, you should dress more professionally. Whether or not we agree with it, first impressions do matter, and people can decide before you even open your mouth whether or not they want to listen to you. So my rule of thumb is that if I'm presenting, I try to at least wear business casual. So not necessarily a business suit, but a nice pair of pants and a nice blouse. My other advice in relation to that would be to dress comfortably. Business wear has come a long way, and there's definitely a lot of options out there to help you look professional and still remain comfortable. I would also suggest not wearing a new outfit the first time on the first day, like on the day of your presentation, in case there's a tag that's like getting at your neck or something like that. You don't want to be fiddling around with your outfit. You want to make sure that you're comfortable. So make sure it's something you've worn before that you know is comfortable. You don't want it to distract you while you're delivering your presentation. The only other thing that I can think of that may affect what you wear, and I think Joanne touched on this, is whether or not you're going to be wearing like a lavalier microphone. Those are small clip-on microphones. And sometimes if you're presenting in front of a big group, that may be the option that the venue has for you. If you are going to wear that, you're going to want to wear a shirt that will allow the microphone to be placed properly. Normally, it's best placed on the center of your upper chest. Placing it closer to like the collar of a shirt could prove to alter the quality of sound every time you turn your head. So you want to just be mindful of all of those things. But you should be given ample notice by whoever, you know, if you're delivering a presentation to a large enough crowd, they should be able to let you know what type of equipment they have for you to use so that you can do a test run and make sure that everything is properly placed. And there's a lot more that can be added to this, but the main thing is be comfortable, you know, look the part, look professional. I'm a big proponent of like, if I'm doing a presentation, this is just me personally, that's the day I'm not wearing jeans. I'm wearing something really nice because I want people to not focus on what I'm wearing and just focus on what I'm saying, kind of along with the other things we were saying as well. So,
Yeah, definitely don't wear any new shoes.
yeah.
Don't wear any new shoes. I don't recommend you wear anything too sparkly or blinging in your earrings or a barrette or anything, because if there are lights, the lights will get in there. It'll reflect back at people. I mean, I love wearing a tiara, but it's just not an appropriate time for a presentation to wear one of my many tiaras. It's not a good thing. I tend to dress in black or black and white. It's what I like to call trainer drag. I'm almost always doing that. It's my style. It's what I do. I dress conservatively. I don't know, Karina, you have anything to add?
Like Sherry said, it kind of depends on the situation. I'm not one for suits unless it's a very flashy suit, because that's me and that makes me feel powerful. I remember being in an organization that was trying to teach you how to dress for interviews. And by the time they were done with me, I felt so unlike myself. My confidence had fled. So when I do have to wear a suit, I'll be the one in a white pinstripe, because for me, that's fun. Um, but you won't catch me in high heels, that's for sure.
Thank you all for contributing to this question. We're going to move on to the next one, which is for Joanne to answer. Should I let the audience ask questions, and how do I handle that?
Well, if you've invited yourself to present or if they've invited you to speak to them, then you need to build in questions and time for questions. I think not to is use the word ridiculous. I mean, you've got to let people ask questions. You want people engaged in what you're speaking, and one of the ways they show that is they've got questions for you. But plan for them, anticipate them. Tell the audience when you will take questions. And tell them parameters. I'll take as many questions as possible, but I have to finish by such and such a time, so I'll answer what I can as time allows. So plan for them, tell your audience when, and then anticipate the types of questions that you might get and be prepared. Once someone asks you a question, then pause and listen to them carefully. I tend to write down questions as they're being asked or just take a little shorthand note. That serves a couple of purposes, and I'll come back to that. You want to make sure you absolutely understand the question. Listening skills, gosh, Crystal, we could do a whole workshop on listening skills. It's just critical if you are putting yourself out there, to listen carefully. Then think about it. It's all right to think about it. And Karina said it earlier, don't be afraid of silence, especially if you're jotting down that. Oh my God, she's writing down my question. She's really taking it seriously. Oh my goodness. Okay, she can't speak and write at the same time. I can't do that either. Not only do you want to think carefully about your answer, but it buys you time if there are some aspects of the question that might be a little tricky. And then once you've got that question, repeat it back to the person to make sure that absolutely understood what it is they're asking. And then you might deal with some off the subject questions or quote end quote stupid questions, rambling and long-winded people. I could do 10-15 minutes on this. I don't have that time. But I can tell you, if it starts to get a little out of hand and you're running out of time, have something that is called the parking lot. It can be an actual physical piece of paper or a slide in your presentation or just your notepad. And you can say, gee whiz, I'll use, since Karina's up below me, I'll just say, Karina just asked me a question. I've run out of time. I said, Karina, that's a really interesting question. I wish I had time to answer that. Can I have your name? And please come and talk to me at the break or after the presentation and let me get back to you. And once you say the words, let me get back to you to people, you must get back to them. Even if it's a matter of taking their phone number and calling them at their desk, they're going to think you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. You are following through. Follow through is key. It's key in reference questions. It's key here. Use that parking lot. Park the question, put it to the side. You've acknowledged it, and then you can move on.
And another method that you can use, it's a little bit more advanced, it's called back channeling. It is a digital method of being able to allow your audience to ask questions while you are simultaneously presenting and answering those questions as you go through. We use it a lot in teaching. So for example, it would be as if I was presenting and moderating this panel by myself. So I would be talking to you, and I would also be keeping an eye on the chat, commenting on the chat, answering questions from the chat. It is a skill and it's something that takes practice, but it is an option that you can use. And the benefit of that is that all the questions are already in writing for you. to refer back to later.
Thank you, Joanne and Karina. And since we are talking about questions in this question, I also just want to assure our audience today, we're about halfway through our pre-prescribed questions we wanted to address for you. And give you a reminder that you can ask any questions that you are pondering in the chat. If they pertain to the question we're on, we'll pause, we'll address it now. Otherwise, we're going to wait until the end of this presentation and open up the room so you can share any feedback, comments, questions, concerns, and we'll have an open conversation. And with that, let's move on to our next one. And this one is for Sherry to answer, which is, do I need to give a handout to the audience?
Not necessarily. I don't think that for every presentation that you do, you need to give out a handout. However, there are some situations where it might make sense to have handouts ready just in case. It's always a good idea, and I think we mentioned this prior, to have a copy of your presentation for yourself with main points of interest and copies of anything you might be accessing via a laptop or other technology. Even though most of the time technology helps support us, there are times when it fails, unfortunately, and it's always good to have a little bit of a backup plan just in case that kind of thing occurs. Um, what can be done in, I'm sure we've all seen this and been a part of this, is offering up a digital version of your slides or your presentation to the attendees if you choose to do that. It's usually a good idea because sometimes when people are listening to a presentation, they may not catch every single thing. And it would be, I know for me, it's great to kind of go back on that and say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that, they covered this topic or whatever it is. In a smaller group presentation, you can have handouts available on the side just in case technology fails. And your presentation offered up visuals that you want everyone to be able to see. At that point, you could hand out the handouts, or you could give it to them at the end of the presentation. My hesitation with handouts is that attendees, kind of like we said with the slides, attendees are going to be paying more attention to the handouts than to you and your presentation. So if you really want everybody's undivided attention, I wouldn't compete with yourself by giving somebody something to flip through and read while you're presenting. That's really the main gist of my answer to that question. I don't know if Karina or Joanne have anything to add or, to what I said, but that's basically what I would say to that answer.
I think handouts make sense if you're actually doing a teaching workshop. And the other thing I'd like to remind people of, and teachers get taught this when they learn their teaching skills, but the rest of us who don't teach, it can become a revelation that people learn in different ways. And there are 4 basic learning styles, and one of them is reading things. There are people who, you're listening, they really get it. They're listening learners. They take it in the ear and it's in their brain. For other people, it's important for them to take a note. For other people, it's very important for them to read something. So if you're doing a longer training workshop, I think it makes sense. But yes, you have the people who will flip through your PowerPoint slides to see what all turns out. But if you're in a training workshop, you want people to take notes. I tend to give a copy of the slides because I'll tell them to circle certain things and star certain things. This is what I really want you to remember. Pick up your pen and do this. Make them physically do something. But I think for sure presentation. And again, if you're advertising a service, give them a brochure if it exists.
Those are great points, Joanne. And yeah, I guess for me personally, I don't normally do any kind of teaching type of training presentations, but by all means, that's actually a really good idea for people to be able to take notes. And like you said, that everybody kind of learns a different way. So that's a very valid point.
I have a teaching background as well, but it's been my experience when training or presenting to adults, they tend hopefully to know what kind of learner they are at that point, and they know that if they doodle, it helps them. If they knit, they can listen better. And when you try and keep not only those different learning styles, but different neurodivergencies in mind, and be accepting and okay that just because someone's not giving you eye contact doesn't mean they're not necessarily paying attention to you. And sometimes, fiddling with something is exactly what they need. I don't think you need to provide it every time, but more like, hey, if you need to fiddle with a fidget, it's okay. You can do that here. It's not going to disrupt the presentation.
Thank you all. And we did get a comment in the chat from Patricia, which I wanted to read. Patricia said, I am someone who learns and listens better when I'm reading and writing what I am hearing. Note taking helps. I love handouts. So, and she thanked you all for the points that you gave, which again, thank you for contributing to the question. And because it ties into this question so well, just wanted to remind everyone, I put it in the chat, I'm going to speak it as well. The recording of this presentation will get posted to NJALA's YouTube channel later this week, so you can go back and review these questions and our answers. The panelists that you're listening to today, I did ask them to create a handout specific to help you on your learning journey while you prepare for more presentation skills. And that'll give you some insight into the resources that the panelists turn to when they're trying to refresh and polish their skill set. And we thought that you would all enjoy those. Those will come in an email later this week. And now we're going to move on to our next question, which is for Karina to answer. Where and how should I practice?
Everywhere and every way. Despite what you may have heard, don't practice in a mirror. The mirror can only show you what you look like backwards and when you're looking at it. It doesn't show you what you look like when you're not looking at it. You need to see what you look like throughout the presentation. Easiest way to do this is to record yourself. Set up your phone when you're alone, give it a try, or you can set up a Zoom meeting and record it, and you're the only attendee, so you know what you look like. Even practice in front of someone with constructive feedback is probably the best way to go. They can tell you things like, are you swaying too much? Are you saying every other word? Are you speaking too quickly? Are you not prepared enough? Those are things a mirror can't really help you with.
Thank you. Joanne or Sherry, did you have anything to add to this question?
I once knew someone who practiced in front of her cats. Just throwing it out there.
I do like the idea of practicing in front of, like, recording yourself, but then I do like Karina's suggestion of practicing in front of like one or two family members or friends. And I'll gather my kids and my husband and be like, okay, I know you don't want to know anything about this subject, but you need to watch me present it and tell me if I do anything that's blaringly like bad, like Karina said, saying or so, or like too much. So there I go. I just said so. But I like that suggestion a lot.
It also lets you breathe out, and like, if you were caught in the Valley Girl days of twirling your hair, this is nerves, or pulling at yourself, or men might snap their suspenders when they're nervous. I'm not me. I'm always adjusting something in my life. And you're trying to just not do any of that in front of your group because it's distracting. I could do 15, 20 minutes just on visual and verbal hiccups, but you don't have time for that. But practicing in front of someone who could gently point out to you that maybe it's not a good idea to keep sticking your finger in your ear while you speak because you're nervous. It's a good, I recommend it.
Or like saying like all the time is like a really bad idea.
Oh, and one more thing, and lately, because I am the age that I am, I'm older than all of you, I have had to update my cultural references. I cannot be referring to my generation's cultural points and expect my younger things or younger audiences to relate to it. And that only comes out if you're saying things out loud to another person. Hopefully, of that younger generation who'll go, what do you mean? What are you talking about? So it's just a thought.
Thank you all for those insights. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is for Sherry. I want to connect, but how much personal information about myself should I share?
There are many ways that you can share and connect without oversharing too much personal information. Think about it like this. The first time that you meet someone, you may have conversations that share a little bit about you without divulging your deepest, darkest secrets, or TMI, as I like to say, the too much information. When you're presenting, you have to think along those same lines. Introduce yourself, give a brief statement of who you are, what you do, and maybe even toss in a fun fact about yourself to lighten the mood. So, for example, this would be my brief introduction. Hi, I'm Sherry Talurcio. I work for Ocean County Library. I started my journey with the library 10 years ago, and I currently am a librarian for the public information officer and supervise the public relations and printing and graphics departments. Outside of the library, I love to craft, travel, and spend time with my family. I'm delighted to be here presenting to you about XYZ. So, just a short little couple of sentences that say something about yourself. You're not really divulging too much personal information. Um, unless the main topic of the presentation is you, people are there to hear about what the topic actually is and not necessarily get into the nitty gritty details of your personal life. Um, so, it's really what you're comfortable with sharing, but it's also, you shouldn't share too much because that's not what people are there to see, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Thank you, Sherry. Karina or Joanne, did you want to add anything else?
I recommend you write your own introduction and send it ahead and bring a copy with you. There's an amazing amount of people who don't know how to introduce a speaker. And I have a whole method for it. And it could be another little mini workshop, how to introduce a speaker. So if you can look it up and know how to do it or want to get in contact with me, I'll coach you through it. But you need an introduction. And one of the ways is to write it yourself. Those things that Sherry just said can also be part of the introduction for the speaker who's introducing you. And that has to answer, why are you there? Why should we listen to you? What are your credentials that you're today? It's answering that WIFM, what's in it for me? And the introduction can really help.
You can also have your extra information somewhere else, a website, an online portfolio. About.me is a great free platform for that. So you can always say the bare minimum, your introduction. If you'd like to learn more about me, you can visit and give them a place to do that.
Thank you. Good tips all around. All right. For the sake of time, we're moving on to the next question. And this is for Karina to answer. Do I need to use something like PowerPoint or Google Slides?
We kind of answered this previously, but no, you don't. There is definitely content where using slides would be overkill. However, I do recommend it for most situations for many of the reasons we already mentioned. Some people learn best when they have a visual aid, or they like having something to take home and refer to later, whether it's a digital copy of your slides or a handout. If what you're trying to convey is difficult to understand without showing, then you're definitely going to need some sort of a visual aid. Also, keep in mind, it doesn't have to be slides. There are options like video, handouts, like we mentioned before, post-it notes for the parking lot or to park questions, polls, back channeling software like Mentimeter, puppets. You can get really creative. It depends on what you're trying to present.
Thank you. Joanne or Sherry, would you like to add anything to this question? No, I'm taking silence as a no. Thank you again, Karina. We're going to move on to our next question, which is for Sherry. What if I don't want people taking photos of me, my slides, or recording it?
This is also kind of dependent on the situation, but in most cases, I would suggest discussing this with whoever's organizing the presentation or program that you're going to appear at. You would express your concerns with others regarding taking photo of you or your slides, as well as recording the presentation. Whoever is introducing you for the presentation can politely make a request from the audience at that time for no photographs or recording. Most times, people in attendance are going to be very respectful of your wishes. Unfortunately, however, in the day and age that we're in, it does leave a window of opportunity for people to go against that and take your photos and record you anyway secretively. There's not really much that can be done about that, depending on where your presentation is taking place. If you are utilizing slides in your presentation, and you can always, we said this before, you can always offer that in like a PDF format to your attendees in case they want to refer back to your information after the fact. You could also email everyone the information or set up a link on your website with the information. If you were afraid of someone stealing them, you could put like a watermark type of thing on the actual PDF or slides showing that the content is yours. Kind of depends on the situation. I think for the most part, people would be respectful and not take your picture if you don't want your picture taken. But, like I said, in this day and age, you just don't know. Most people in any situation pull out their phones to experience things. And whether that means taking photos or recording, it's kind of the way of the world these days. I don't know if my co-colleagues have anything to say about this, but that's basically what I think.
No, once you're there, you're public, and there's not much you can do about it. You can try to do the parameters. No, I think you covered it.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our next question for Joanne. What do I do if I've been invited to be part of a conference panel?
Well, congratulations. You've been out there. You're out there presenting. You've done something and someone's seen you talk, and now they want you to come and speak at their conference or another meeting as well. So I think it's a fabulous opportunity, personally. And you could be invited to be part of a panel like we were today, or you could be asked to come individually. But a conference panel is common. You've all been to conferences, hopefully, and you've seen how that's go. One thing, ask lots of questions. You keep in touch with the organizer and ask lots of questions. Tell the organizer of the panel what it is you need to be a successful partner panel. Assume that something will go wrong on the day and prepare for it. You want to ask how it's going to be organized, who's doing the moderation, who else is on the panel, how much time do you have to speak, who's speaking about what, so you don't step on each other's information. Get a clear direction on your role on the panel. Request that the moderator be a timekeeper. The three of us are all prepared for the visual hook today, where she will interrupt us and bring us to an end. Speak ahead with your fellow panelists. You're not in a silo by yourself. The organizers should be organizing that, but if they don't, get the contact information and speak with your other panelists. Demand good organizing. And hopefully your panel is different voices with different things to bring to the table. You don't want a panel where everybody is saying exactly the same thing all the time. You want different voices. And if you're going actually physically to a conference, find out all those lovely logistical things. Are they putting you up? Are they paying you? Are they paying you what? All those little things. So I say, congratulations, go do it. It's a lot of fun, and you're not going to be up there by yourself.
Thank you, Joanne. Karina or Sherry, did you have anything to add?
I just want to say, well said, Joanne. I also want to say, just go out there and do it. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. It's about going outside of our comfort zone sometimes. And you realize after you do that you can do a lot more than you give yourself credit for. So I would say if you get asked to do it and you're a little apprehensive, just go for it. As long as you prepare and you practice, you'll be fine.
Thank you. All right, this is our last official question, and I'm going to give Karina, then Joanne, then Sherry all a chance to answer it. So, what does having your voice heard as a presenter mean to you?
For me, being heard is getting some kind of feedback that my presentation achieved its goal. Did my audience learn or feel represented or do whatever was the thing for the presentation? Sometimes you can get a feel for this during the presentation. You get head nods, questions, smiles, invitations to present again on the same topic elsewhere. Sometimes you have to literally ask someone afterwards, hey, how did I do? You can also offer a survey at the end of a presentation to directly ask your audience if you were effective. But for me, I feel heard when I feel successful, and that success is measured by the audience's reaction. Joanne, what is it for you?
I want our communities to automatically think of the public library whenever anything comes up in that community that they're planning or doing. I want them to think, okay, we're going to have a festival in the park in July. Oh, we need to contact the library and get them involved because they're the right people. And one of the ways that your community knows that you're the right people to do this job or help them with this job is because you've gone out and spoken to people in your community. You are out there connecting the library to the people and the organizations that matter. Get involved with your Rotary or your Better Business, your Chamber of Commerce, or other professional organizations. They think of you automatically. Gee, I saw Karina Gonzalez. I saw Sherry Taylor Teresa speak, do this. You know what? We should talk to them. They really seem like smart people who know what they're doing. The library is there to cooperate, and the library's going to have everyone community centers. So my thing about going out and presenting to other people outside of the library is to make them understand how essential their public library is to them, that they can't plan things without us. That's what it means for me to have the library voice heard and you representing the library as that voice.
I just want to jump in. And first of all, I just want to say what an honor it's been to present alongside Karina and Joanne, to share our knowledge of public speaking and presentation skills with fellow library staff. You know, the bottom line is that we are all working toward a common goal. And I'm a firm believer of sharing information and continuing with education to achieve the highest knowledge possible. The core of public speaking hasn't changed, but the landscape in which we deliver the speech or presentation is constantly changing, just like libraries are constantly changing. So we need to stay up to date with how people are communicating, to know how best to reach them in a presentation and how to best reach them in our outreaches. It's so important that when you're out there in the community and you're representing whatever library system you work for, that you properly present yourself. That might be the first impression that somebody gets of the whole entire library system. And you certainly don't want it to leave a bad taste in anyone's mouth. You want them to leave saying, wow, I think I'm going to go there on Monday to get my library card. And what a great library system. And you want these people who don't know about the library to feel good about it. And you want to draw them in and have them use our services. We don't ever want libraries to become to get to that point where everyone says, oh, well, you're only a place with books and you're not relevant anymore. And that's not the case. We're very relevant. Having good presentation skills and good public speaking will only further advance our mission as public libraries. The only other thing I want to say is that I hope everybody found the information that we shared today really useful. And I wish everyone the best of luck with presenting. You know, if anyone ever needs anything, I'm an email away and I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has if we don't cover them here.
Sherry, Karina, Joanne, Thank you so much for taking the time to work on this presentation, to practice this presentation. We really wanted to hammer out a lot of the details and give a good presentation for you today. So I hope that that was evident in our flow and how we conducted ourselves during this presentation. Um, this is now the time where we are going to open up the room and allow all of you to ask your questions. I see Joanne put her contact info, her email account in there. So if anyone needed to follow up with her, um, Karina and Sherry, you are welcome to add your email in as well, or a website. Um, so if anybody has questions and you are comfortable with unmuting, you can do so at this time. Otherwise, I'm going to be silent for a moment while people have a chance to type in the chat. And there is lots of good praise coming in the chat. So um, panelists, if you're unable to look at the chat, you're getting lots of very informative. Thank you. It was well done. So that really does mean a lot to all of us. So thank you for sharing that. While we are quiet and waiting for any questions, let me give you some other NJALA plugs. So today, this Having Your Voice Heard was our first of 4 topics that we're going to present. So you're going to have an opportunity from hear from some of these same panelists and several others about other topics. We're going to do one a month. So we'll have another in November and December, and then we'll wrap up our series in January. We were really hoping that this series is empowering to any level of library worker, but we want you to know and hear from some experience of some of the tricks and tips that some professionals in the field have had. And we also want you to know that your voice matters. It doesn't matter where you work in your organization, whether you're maybe a courier or a substitute worker or part-time, full-time, have a library degree or not. Being a presenter and advocating for yourself is a very worthwhile skill, and it's something that doesn't always get addressed and encouraged in people a lot. And so that was our mission for coming together to come with this panel talk. So we hope to see you at some of the next ones. So again, if anyone has questions, you can just unmute, raise your hand, I'll see it, type it in the chat. Any final thoughts while we wait for a question from Joanne, Karina, or Sherry? Any sneak peeks for future programs? I can sure share some, like I said, alluded to, we're going to have a couple more in this Having Your Voice Heard series. Karina, you may have to help me because I can't look it up on the computer with the presentation running at the same time of what our next topics are. So I'll give you a moment to pull those up. Other ones NJALA has ready to go. Something that I've been hosting one a month all year long is a series of Google presentations. So the next one, it's always the first Thursday of the month at 10 a.m. The next one is looking at like Google Meets and GQs, giving an overview of what those are like. And then in December, the last one I'm going to talk about is Google Photos, how to stay organized, how to use those tools differently. And we cover it from both a free account perspective or like a paid professional account. And then in February, we're going to have a Canva demonstration. So it's going to cover what it would look like with a free account or a paid account, how branding can work, how you can create different things through the Canva application. So that is something that a lot of people in libraries and outside of libraries have a lot of questions about. So that's some sneak peeks for you. And I'll make sure to put those in the review that you'll get, you know, the summary handout of today's presentation and notice of when this is online.
So as far as the rest of the series is concerned, we have today, which focused on presentation skills. Then November 28th, we have underserved minority members. December 19th, we have interpersonal skills through empathy. And then January 23rd, finding your career path.
Thank you for looking those up, Karina.